The Xarn Empire had entered a new phase, one ruled not by pride, but by fear. Their mighty fleet had returned home. Bases were being checked, cleaned, and rebuilt. But no one celebrated. They all remembered the scout. They all remembered how quickly everything had fallen apart, without a single shot. In secret, the Xarn leaders created a new task force. It was called Project Shieldfire. Its only mission: understand human tactics and find a way to stop them. A group of the Empire's best minds gathered in an underground research bunker, hidden deep in the mountains of Rethak Prime. Scientists, generals, hackers, even former spies. Together, they studied every piece of data from the failed capture. They watched the footage again and again. "How did he take control of our systems?" one of the scientists asked. "He never even touched a terminal," said another. "It wasn't about touching," an old cyber expert replied. "It was about timing. Everything he did was already planned." The truth slowly became clear. The scout hadn't hacked the Xarn systems when he arrived. He had already done it before he was caught. His armor, his implants, the data pulses they thought were random. They had been quietly scanning, recording, and sending signals a whole time. Even when he was being punched or dragged through the hallways, he was working. He had wanted to be captured. One general stood and shouted, "So it was a trap. We didn't catch him. He caught us." Silence filled the room. And for the first time, even the bravest officers admitted it. Yes, he had used them. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. The real fear came when they discovered one last message, buried deep inside their own files. It was hidden in code, written like a ghost's whisper, a message no machine had flagged, no system had detected. It simply read, "Thank you for your help. We'll be back if needed." No threats, no insults, just a cold promise. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber on Earth, the scout sat with 4 other humans in a dark room. They were part of a unit called Echo 9, a silent team known only to the highest ranks of Earth defense. Each one of them had completed similar missions on different worlds. One had turned an enemy planet's sky dark for 5 minutes using only a stolen weather drone. Another had made a rival empire believe its own ships had been hacked by planting false signals during a trade summit. And now, they had come to debrief the most dangerous member of all. The one they called Ghostblade, the man who had walked into a Xarn stronghold alone. He spoke with calm control. "They still think it was only me." One of the others nodded. "That's how it should be." Another asked, "How long before they realize you were just part of something bigger?" The scout smiled slightly. "They won't. Fear doesn't ask questions. It assumes the worst." On the other side of the galaxy, the Galactic Council had started urgent talks again. Not about war, about reputation. Because fear had shifted the balance of power. Now, every empire wanted to avoid conflict with Earth. Alliances changed. Old enemies became close observers. Trade deals were rewritten to favor humans. And all because of one man. That was the part most species couldn't understand. One human scout had done more damage than an entire war fleet, without killing anyone, without shouting, without raising a flag. In his calm silence, he had sent a louder message than any weapon ever could. Back on Earth, Ghostblade sat in a quiet room, overlooking a dark forest. He had been given time to rest, but even in peace, his mind was alert. A voice spoke through his earpiece. It was the commander of Echo 9. "We have a new situation." "Where?" he asked. "Not far." The Jaru Syndicate intercepted a message. "Someone is trying to copy our Recon tech. A mix of ours and the stolen Xarn data." "Who?" he asked again. "The Golan Union." Ghostblade stood up. "I'll go," he said. "You just got back," the commander replied. He turned toward the window. "That's why I'm the right one." There was silence on the line. Then a quiet answer. "Very well." You leave at sunrise. As the night settled, Ghostblade looked up at the stars. Out there, the galaxy had changed. Not because of ships, not because of guns, but because of a plan they never saw coming. A plan written not in explosions, but in silence. And the galaxy was still trying to understand it. The Xarn base felt more like a trap than a fortress now. Doors that once opened smoothly now stuttered. Lights flickered without reason. The atmosphere was thick with confusion and fear. No one said it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. They were being watched, not by the human in the cell, but by something else. Commander Talrex paced inside the control room. Dozens of officers worked around him, checking systems, rebooting defenses, and trying to understand the strange errors. 3 more satellites had gone dark. Power drains were spreading across the upper levels. And the human, still locked away, still not moving. "Get me a report," Talrex snapped. An officer handed him a datapad. It was filled with strange code, lines of symbols none of their systems could read. Every time they tried to delete it, it came back stronger. And always, it carried the same header. Recon active. Observation complete. Talrex gritted his teeth. "Shut it down. Burn the circuits if you have to." "We tried, Commander," the officer replied. "It's not in the system anymore. It is the system." In the prison wing, 2 guards were posted outside the human cell. One leaned against the wall, clearly tired. The other, a more alert soldier named Varro, kept his weapon ready. He didn't trust the silence. Not anymore. Inside the cell, the human opened his eyes slowly. Then, for the first time, he stood up. He didn't speak. He didn't touch the walls or the door. He simply looked straight up, toward the ceiling. Varro noticed and aimed his weapon. "Sit down." The human didn't move. Instead, the lights went out. Total darkness. Then red backup lights flickered on. Sirens didn't scream this time. There was no alarm, just silence. And then, movement on every screen. In the command center, the walls lit up with dozens of live feeds. Every hallway, every lab, every corridor, shadows moved through them. Not soldiers, not beasts, just outlines, too smooth, too fast, like ghosts. One of the officers cried out, "They're inside. Human infiltrators." "No," Talrex said slowly. "We would have heard them land." Another screen showed a drone room. Every machine had shut down, replaced by a glowing blue circle on each monitor. The same symbol from earlier. The eye. Talrex turned to his tactical chief. "This can't be just one man. Where are the reinforcements coming from?" "We don't know," she answered. "There are no new landings. No fleet. No signals." It didn't make sense. Unless the scout hadn't called for backup. He was the backup. A living signal, one the human fleet could follow, without sound or light. He wasn't waiting for help. He was help. A soft voice echoed through the command speakers. It wasn't loud, but it stopped every officer in place. The voice said only one thing. "Connection established." Talrex stared at the speaker. "Who said that?" No one answered. Back in the prison, the human stepped forward. Varro raised his rifle. "Don't move." The human stopped. Then he tilted his head. "They're almost done mapping the lower floors. You should leave." Varro looked confused. "What are you talking about?" The human nodded once, slowly. "You've already lost the base. You just haven't realized it yet." Suddenly, a large section of the base lost gravity. Tools, crates, and even a few soldiers floated into the air. Panic spread. Anti-grav controls had been reversed, without warning. Then came the message, scrolling across every screen. "Recon phase complete. Initiating DETRENC." Talrex stared in disbelief. "Deterrence," he whispered. The tactical chief stepped forward. "It means warning. A message. To who? To everyone. The ground shook, but not from an explosion. A pulse had been sent across the planet, a silent wave of data spreading out like a ripple in water. A signal, and in deep space, far from the Tarn system, ships began to turn. Human ships, cloaked, watching, waiting. On board the lead vessel, a captain read the scout's full report. Every hallway, every weapon, every weak point. The captain looked at his crew. He did his job. Back on the Tarn base, the human sat again, calm, quiet. He looked at the nearest camera and spoke just 2 words. You're surrounded. Talrex's face went pale. What have we done? The room was silent. And then, without a sound, dozens of cloaked human ships appeared just above the atmosphere, each one fully armed, fully ready, and already aimed at key positions. But they didn't fire. They didn't need to, because their scout had already done the real damage. He had shown the Xarn that power wasn't always loud. Sometimes it walked in alone, smiled, and watched everything burn from the inside. And now, the galaxy would know. The story of the captured human spread faster than light. On every channel, in every corner of the galaxy, species whispered the same question. If one human could do this, what happens when they send more? The Xarn Empire tried to keep it quiet. They told the media that the scout was just a lucky trickster, a glitch in their systems, a minor embarrassment. But no one believed them, because the footage had already leaked. They saw the Xarn defenses shut down. They saw the scout walk free, untouched. They saw the ships that never fired, because they didn't need to. Across the stars, powerful empires paused their plans. Rival fleets went dark. Some started preparing for war. Others sent quiet envoys to Earth, offering friendship. Even enemies of humanity started rethinking everything. Because the message was clear. Humanity didn't need to destroy you to win. They just had to walk in. At the center of the Alliance Zone, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Dozens of alien leaders filled the great circular chamber. The Tarn ambassador, dressed in dark robes, stood in silence as the footage played on the large screen. Some laughed. Some watched in fear. And some, especially the older species, nodded slowly. They didn't kill anyone, said one elder from the Kareen Dominion. They didn't drop a single bomb, but they defeated an empire. A lizard-like diplomat from the Drek coalition hissed. That was one man. And that's exactly the point, whispered the insectoid ambassador beside him. Debate broke out. Some wanted sanctions. Others wanted to form a united military force against Earth, but none of them truly believed it would help. Because they weren't sure what else humanity had waiting. Far away, on a small moon station near Earth, the human scout stood before his commanders. His helmet was off now, revealing a calm face with sharp eyes and a faint scar along his jaw. Mission report complete, he said. A general nodded. Did they understand the message? They did, the scout replied. They just don't know what to do with it. The room was filled with officers from every branch. Navy, Intelligence, Cyber Command. All of them had studied his report. Why didn't they execute you? One of them asked. The scout smiled slightly. Because fear makes people curious, and curiosity makes them careless. The general leaned forward. And if they try again, if they come for Earth, the smile faded. Then I won't be the only one they meet. Back in the Xarn Empire, Commander Talrex stood in front of a private screen. The base had been repaired, but the scars were deeper than any metal could hide. He rewatched the footage again. The scout in the cell, the lights failing, the ships arriving. He stared at the final message. This was only Recon. Talrex had once thought humanity was a young race, wild, uncontrolled, brave but reckless. Now he saw the truth. They were planners. They were watchers. And when they acted, it was never without purpose. In a dark room on the other side of the planet, the Xtarn Emperor met with his council. They spoke of revenge, of preparing a new fleet, but the Emperor raised a single hand, stopping them. "No," he said. "They didn't destroy us. They warned us. To go after them now would be suicide. But our pride," one general protested, "is meaningless if we are dead," the Emperor said coldly. A long pause followed. Then he added, "We must adapt. Study them. Understand how they fight without fighting." "And if we can't?" the general asked. The Emperor looked at the stars outside. "Then we run." Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity said nothing. No public speeches. No threats. No celebration. They just returned to their quiet, watchful state, because this wasn't about war. This was about sending a message so clear, you never needed to say it twice. The scout, now back in training, stood on a high cliff overlooking the ocean. A young cadet walked up to him. "Is it true," the cadet asked, "that you walked into an enemy base with no backup?" The scout didn't turn. "Yes." "Weren't you scared?" "Of what?" the scout said. "Losing?" The cadet blinked. "Yeah." The scout finally turned, eyes cold but calm. "If I lost, then they would know exactly what kind of enemy they invited." The wind carried the silence between them. Far above, in orbit, human ships moved like shadows across the stars. Quiet, disciplined, always watching. The galaxy had learned something that day, and it would never forget. Never challenge the race that sends a ghost before it sends a soldier. The galaxy had changed, but many didn't realize it yet. They still believed wars would be fought with fleets, with missiles, with armies marching across stars. But a quiet shadow had moved through the darkness. A single human scout had done what no armada could. He had changed fear itself. Across hundreds of planets, whispers continued. Not about invasions, not about destruction, but about a man who walked into an enemy base and walked out without firing a shot. The Xtarn Empire still hadn't recovered. Their systems were slowly restored, their soldiers retrained, their leaders more careful. But one truth stayed with every commander, every guard, every engineer. The human wasn't stopped. He chose to leave. And because of that, they watched the stars more closely now, not for fleets, but for a single signal, a pulse, a whisper, a warning. Meanwhile, deep in the Golan Union, an aggressive empire known for copying the technology of others, a secret lab hummed with activity. They believed they had found the secret to human recon tactics. They had stolen pieces of the Xtarn data and tried to mix it with their own tech. "Soon," said one Golan scientist, "we will become the new masters of stealth." But something was wrong. Their systems kept crashing. Their recon bots disappeared. Strange static ran through their labs. And then one day they received a message. Simple, cold, familiar. "Stop." The Golans laughed. Until the lights went out. In the darkness, someone moved. Silent. Fast. A single guard screamed, but the cameras showed nothing. No attacker. No weapon. Just a soft blue glow. And when the lights returned, every data core was gone. Wiped clean. No traces left. Except one. A message scratched into the main console, written by hand. "You were warned." On Earth, Ghostblade stood on a rooftop in the rain. The city below was alive with lights, people, peace. He watched it without speaking. Behind him, an old general walked up. "You've shaken the galaxy." "I didn't fire a shot," Ghostblade said. "And that's why they're still afraid," the general replied. Ghostblade turned. "They'll try again." Of course, fear doesn't stop everyone. But now, they know, if they touch Earth, we don't come screaming. We come silent. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the general asked, "Do you regret it? Becoming the ghost?" Ghostblade looked at the horizon. I wasn't made for the light. He walked away, vanishing into the shadow. In the Galactic Council, diplomats argued again. Some begged for peace with Earth. Others wanted to form an anti-human alliance. But one elder stood and silenced the room. You want to fight them? The elder said. Then tell me, how do you stop an enemy who is already standing behind you, before you even know they've arrived? No one answered. Because they knew the truth. Earth didn't need to boast. They didn't need banners or anthems. They had ghosts, scouts, people like Ghostblade. And those ghosts now had something stronger than weapons. They had a legacy, a lesson burned into the minds of every general in the galaxy. Never judge a mission by the number of soldiers. Never celebrate a victory too early. And never, ever forget, if the first human you fight turns out to be a scout, you've already lost. The stars watched quietly, because in the endless silence of space, one human had changed everything. And he didn't even need to speak. The entire Ictaran base was under lockdown. Alarms had stopped, but tension hung in the air like smoke. Every soldier moved with nerves on edge. Every screen was checked again and again. The human, this so-called scout, was locked behind the strongest cell that Karn had. No windows, no signals in or out, just silence and cold steel. But even that didn't make them feel safe. Commander Talrex stood in the control room, watching the footage on a large display. It showed the human sitting calmly in his cell. No movement, no talking, just stillness. He's waiting, Talrex muttered. For what? Asked a young officer. Talrex didn't answer. He didn't know. And that was the problem. Their scientists were still trying to understand the device found behind the human's ear. It wasn't just a tracker. It was a full scanning system, quiet, deep, and fast. It had mapped out 90% of the base's layout before anyone even realized it was active. Worse, it had transmitted all of it before they could block it. The signal was gone, sent through an encrypted channel that none of their systems could trace. He's not just a soldier, said one of the scientists. He's part machine. His brain is enhanced. His suit, his mind, they're made to work together. Commander Talrex clenched his jaw. Then tell me how to stop him. The scientist looked afraid. I don't think we can. Talrex turned toward the main window. In the distance, thick clouds hung low over the jungle trees. Somewhere out there, above that sky, Earth's fleet might already be on its way. Or worse, they might already be here, cloaked like the story said. Talrex wasn't afraid of armies. He was afraid of what came first. The scout. The ghost. The warning. Back in the prison cell, the human moved. Just a small stretch of his fingers. Then his head turned toward the security camera, and he stared directly into it. For a second, the screen flickered, then went black. The guards rushed to check the feeds. All systems in the lower block had failed. Cameras, doors, lights. Gone. When backup power came on, the human was still there, sitting calmly. But the message was clear. He could have left if he wanted to. Talrex ordered 10 guards to enter the block and double reinforce the cell. The guards marched in with heavy stun rifles, armor, and scanner drones. The human didn't resist, didn't move, just watched them. One of the soldiers, a young recruit named Siko, stayed back a little. He had seen too many strange things already. As the other guards placed new locks and metal barriers, Siko kept his eyes on the prisoner. The human turned slightly toward him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, just a second, Siko felt like the man was looking through him, as if reading everything in his mind. He shivered. When the group left the cell block, Siko pulled his commander aside. He's not trying to escape, he said quietly. What are you talking about? The officer snapped. He wants us to keep watching him. Siko replied. Because it's not him we need to worry about. The officer didn't understand, but the idea stuck in his mind. That night, something else happened. One of the orbital satellites went offline. Then a second. Then a third. The Xarn technicians tried to reboot them, but they weren't just offline. They had been taken, hijacked by a code none of them had seen before. The command screen showed a simple symbol. A single human eye. Watching. Commander Talrex slammed his fists on the control table. We captured one man. How is this possible? An older scientist approached, holding a report with shaking hands. This isn't about the man, he said. This is about the network. Talrex looked at him sharply. Explain. The scientist took a breath. The scout wasn't alone. He never was. His job was to come close, to get inside. But the moment we brought him here, we invited something else in. What? The scientist answered with one word. Everything. All their systems, weapons, cameras, scanners had been scanned, probed, and tested. The human's implant was not just a transmitter. It was a tool for data war. Silent, invisible, and fast. We gave them a window, the scientist said. Now they can see us. From the inside. Outside the base, nothing moved. No enemy forces, no ships in the sky. But inside, the fear grew. They had captured the body, but they had let the ghost in. And now, they didn't know how to get it out. Back in the cell, the human leaned his head back against the wall and whispered to himself. Phase 2, complete. The Xarn Empire had always believed in strength. For years, they had conquered weaker species, defeated rival fleets, and grown without fear. Their enemies respected them. Some feared them. And when they heard a human scout had been captured, they laughed. They thought it was a message of power. But they were wrong. It was a warning. Now, cloaked human ships filled the sky above the colony. Silent. Still. Waiting. Inside the Xarn Command Center, Commander Talrex could barely speak. His officers were frozen, staring at the scanners. Dozens, no, hundreds, of human ships had arrived. But not one had fired. No missiles, no lasers, no attacks. Just silence. That was worse, because it meant the humans weren't scared. They were in control. Talrex looked at his screen again. The scout's signal was still active, still pulsing from deep within the prison. Every system was tied to it now. Every defense protocol had been copied and sent to those ships above. The human had been inside for just 2 days. 2 days, and he had turned the entire base into an open book. How did we not see this coming? Talrex asked, his voice almost a whisper. One of the younger officers answered, voice shaking. We thought we'd defeated him, but we never asked why he came alone. Now they understood. The scout was never meant to win a fight. He was meant to start one, and win it before it even began. Talrex gave the order to prepare the base's defenses, but the systems didn't respond. The power grid was frozen. Turrets wouldn't move. Shields wouldn't activate. They were helpless. The scout hadn't just mapped the base. He had infected it, turned their weapons off, one by one. In the prison wing, the lights flickered again. The scout stood at the edge of his cell. He placed one hand gently on the glass. It slid open, not broken, not forced. It just obeyed. 2 guards outside the block froze. Their weapons were up, hands shaking. The human didn't raise a weapon. He just looked at them and said, "This isn't your fault. Leave." One of them ran. The other hesitated, but then followed. The scout walked through the halls alone. Cameras followed him. Doors opened without a sound. No one dared to stop him. He walked through the same path they had dragged him in. Quiet. Calm. Every system stepped out of his way. By the time he reached the command level, Talrex already knew. He had lost. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Talrex turned. The scout stood there, face still covered, blue visor glowing. They faced each other in silence. "You came here, knowing we'd capture you. Talrex said. The scout didn't deny it. You knew we'd bring you inside, let you see everything. The scout nodded once. And now what? Talrex asked. Do you kill us? No, the scout replied. We don't start wars. Then why are your ships here? The scout stepped forward. To remind you, if one human can do this, imagine what happens when we stop holding back. Talrex lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he felt small. He looked at the screens. Outside, the human ships were still waiting. No threats, no countdowns, just presence, power and silence. Why didn't you just destroy us? Talrex asked quietly. The scout paused, then said, because we want you to live. We want you to remember. A moment later, the scout turned around and walked out. No one stopped him. Outside the base, a sleek black shuttle landed. He stepped in. The door closed behind him. And then, the human ships disappeared. All of them. Gone in seconds. No missiles. No war. No blood. Just a message. Inside the Xarn command room, Talrex stood in silence. Around him, officers didn't speak. The silence was heavier than any battle they had fought. On the wall, the scout's last message remained on every screen. This was only Recon. Other empires watched the broadcast later. Some laughed. Some panicked. But every military officer, every leader, every general saw the truth. That Xarn hadn't lost a war. They had survived a warning. And if they didn't change, the next visit wouldn't be silent. It would be final. Because the humans had shown the galaxy something terrifying. They didn't send armies first. They sent one man. And that was enough. The sky above the Xarn colony world was dark with thick clouds, but the land below was full of life. Alien workers moved through large machines, mining the planet's rich metals. Towering structures touched the clouds, glowing with blue lights. The Xarn Empire had made this world their own, a strong base far from Earth. Then, one day, an alert came from the outer sensor grid. Something had entered their space, a single dropship, small, fast, and human-made. Inside the Xarn command center, alarms echoed through the hall. Commander Talrex looked at the screen and narrowed his eyes. Just one ship, he said. Is this some kind of trick? No, Commander, said his officer. Only one life form detected. Human. Talrex laughed. One human. Against us. Still, he ordered every defense system to full power. Fighters were scrambled. Ground troops were prepared. The dropship slowed as it entered the atmosphere, and instead of escaping or attacking, it landed quietly on the edge of a jungle near one of their minor bases. The soldiers surrounded the area. They aimed their weapons at the door of the dropship, ready to fire. Then the door opened. A single human stepped out. He wore dark, armored gear, light and flexible. His helmet covered his face, with a glowing blue visor. He didn't speak. He didn't even raise a weapon. He just looked at them. Put your hands up, a Xarn soldier shouted. The human didn't move. The soldiers fired stun blasts, bright pulses of energy that hit the human and knocked him to the ground. Within seconds, he was unconscious. The squad dragged him back to the base. The victory was quick, clean, and almost boring. One of the officers kicked the man's side lightly and laughed. This is the great human threat. Another joined in. So much for their reputation. He didn't even fire. Commander Talrex arrived at the scene. He looked down at the body and frowned. Check his gear. Scan him. Make sure it's not a trick. The medics scanned him. His armor had no explosives. His weapon was standard issue but untouched. His vitals were strong, and his brain activity was high, even unconscious. They took him to a secure holding cell deep underground. Guards stood at every corner. The Xarn uploaded a victory message to their networks. The humans sent a scout to spy on us. He failed. He was captured in minutes. Humanity's weakness is now clear. The galaxy saw it. Other species laughed. Even Earth's allies began to worry. But inside the cell, the human began to move. Slowly, quietly. He opened his eyes. No panic, no fear. He looked around, studying everything. The lights, the guards, the walls. And then, he smiled. When Commander Talrex came to question him, he brought 2 guards and several scientists. He wanted answers. "What is your name?" he asked. The human said nothing. "Why did you come alone?" No answer. "Where is the rest of your fleet?" The human looked up and finally spoke. His voice was calm, low, and steady. "I'm not part of a fleet." Talrex growled. "Then what are you?" There was a pause. Then the human answered, "Recon." The room went silent. Talrex blinked. "What?" "I'm not here to fight," the human said. "I'm here to observe, to learn." One of the scientists laughed. "You? Alone? On a recon mission? This is madness." The human smiled again, just a little. "Madness or preparation?" Talrex slammed the table. "You were captured. We defeated you in seconds. You failed." The human didn't respond. He just leaned back and said quietly, "You think this is over. It's not." The guards shifted uncomfortably. Something about the human didn't feel right. He looked like a prisoner, but acted like a commander. After the questioning, Talrex left the room, frustrated. "Keep him locked," he told the guards. "He's finished." But that night, something strange happened. One of the guards fainted during patrol. The others found him lying on the floor. When they checked the security cameras, they saw nothing. No movement, no sign of an attack. The next morning, one of the lead scientists noticed the human's implant, something small, embedded behind his ear, had been active during the night. It had accessed their systems. Scans showed the human had been silently uploading data, maps of the base, power levels, troop numbers, and security weaknesses. Someone shouted, "Cut his connection." They tried, but it was too late. The signal was already gone. Transmitted. Delivered. Somewhere far beyond the stars. Someone now knew everything. Commander Talrex stared at the report in disbelief. "We captured him. We shut down his weapons. And still, he got what he came for." No one laughed now, because they realized something far worse than losing a battle. They had never won. They had just triggered the next phase, and Earth was watching.